This is Wayne from My Tech News, and in today's video, I'm going to be talking about the PlayStation 5 because hours earlier, Sony did finally unveil the PlayStation 5 for the first time. We got the design of the console. We also got all the games that are going to be coming out for the PlayStation 5. So in this video, I'm going to be talking about my thoughts and opinions on some of the games and on the hardware for the PlayStation 5. Just keep in mind, in this video, I'm not going to talk about every single game that Sony actually announced for the PlayStation 5, basically how it's going to work in this video. I'm going to talk about all the games that I'm personally excited for, and then I'm also going to talk about the design of the console and talk about my thoughts and opinions on that as well. As we speak right now, we're so close to the next generation of consoles. I can safely say I'm probably more excited for the PS5 than I am the Xbox Series X. That's just due to the fact that I think, for me personally, a lot of their first-party IPs for Sony really do speak to me more than what Microsoft has to offer when it comes to the Xbox Series X. That's just my take on it. Which one am I actually going to pick up at launch? It really just boils down to the actual pricing of these systems. What more does Microsoft have to actually show for the Xbox Series X? But right now, my money's still on the PlayStation 5. And let's talk about this event that Sony recently had for the PS5. First off, of course, let's talk about the console and get the console right out the way. So, of course, prior to this presentation, nobody really knew what the design of the PlayStation 5 was actually going to be. We saw that prototype, and that prototype was pretty weird, and it looked like it wasn't going to be a thing, and it turns out, of course, that's not the real design of the console at all. But we do have a very interesting design, and I honestly don't think anybody predicted the PS5 to actually look like this. So let's actually now look at the PS5 itself. So here's the actual PS5 itself right there, and you can see the PS5 actually looks like a very interesting system. A lot of people are actually talking about how the PS5 hardware actually looks like an Alienware computer, or maybe a router from like the mid-2000s, and honestly, I can actually picture both of those, an Alienware computer and a router. And overall, I don't think this is the best design, but for me, I'm one of those people that actually kind of am vibing with this vibe because it's something a little bit different than your standard game box or your DVD player. It's just very unique and very out there, and it's something very, like I said, just very different. But I understand how a lot of people can bash the PS5 because the PS5 doesn't look like a standard game console. It looks kind of weird, like I said again, an Alienware computer, or more so a router. So I do actually get this, but the more I think about it, maybe they had no choice to actually make the console like this, because you do have to keep in mind when we're talking about next-gen consoles are going to supposedly be true 4K gaming machines, and since they're going to be that much power inside of both the PS5 and the Xbox Series X, of course, most likely they had to put a lot of power into these systems, so maybe they had to make them a really weird design. Overall, the more I think about it, I think I actually like this design more than the Xbox Series X. At first, I was like, the Xbox Series X is actually vibing with me, at least the design, because it's more of a standard system. It's nothing too crazy with that system. But then, when you look at this thing, it looks very funky and very futuristic to me personally. But the more I think about it, I kind of like this whole futuristic, like, weird design with the PS5 itself. And I don't think anyone also predicted this console to come out the gate with a white system, because I don't think Sony in the history of the PlayStation actually released a console that's actually a white console. I know there's been white consoles in gaming history, but I don't think Sony's ever released a base unit that's actually been a white color. I know they made white PlayStations before, but not like a one that's came out at release, I do believe. So this is the first for Sony, and if I'm wrong, I do apologize for that. So it is very interesting they're deciding to go with white. One thing that someone did actually point out with this system is the fact that I do agree with some people. Some people were saying that this could be a dust magnet, and I can definitely see the fins where the air has to come out, like up at the top where my mouse is moving. A lot of dust can get into to that area and actually start bogging this thing down. But apparently, from what I heard from rumors and just different things on the internet, apparently the PS5 is supposed to have some phenomenal cooling, definitely better cooling than something like the PS4. I think they're going to spend more money on the cooling here, so hopefully it won't sound like a lawnmower or a jet engine when this thing actually is being used by the user. So that's actually something, and it's actually very interesting too that they decided to pretty much make the console pretty much look like the controller or go along with the controller. So props to Sony for actually doing that, because I actually am a fan of that they actually look like they do go hand in hand. And those were the fins I was talking about when it comes to cooling, how dust could easily probably get in those holes and be a dust collector, which is honestly not good. And then let's actually get to the biggest thing with this reveal, was the fact that, of course, you can see on screen right now, they are going to have 2 SKUs of the PS5 at launch. At launch, you're going to have the standard PS5 and then a digital-only PS5. And of course, just like the name says, digital edition. That means you're not going to have a Blu-ray drive equipped with that edition. You're going to have only a version that you can only download games to. And honestly, if you can only pick one console, of course, the best bang for your buck, of course, is going to be the one with the 4K Blu-ray player right there, of course. If you can get that one, even if you only used digital downloads or you only use the PSN store, just due to the fact that if you ever want to buy used games, or someone that you borrow used games, or if you want to rent used games, that one's obviously going to be the better choice. The only thing that would make you get the digital version of the PS5 is going to be the price, of course. If it's like $100 less, that's almost enough for you to go ahead and get the digital version of the PS5. But if they're around the same price, even if you only save a little bit money, maybe like $20, $30, it's probably worth it to get the standard edition of the PS5 in the long run, because you're really going to benefit from that drive, just due to the fact that you can play 4K Blu-rays, and then on top of that, you can play games, of course, and that's really going to be a big deal. And on top of that, I'm pretty sure that Sony is actually going to allow you to put in PS4 games as well, and without the disc drive, it's going to be kind of a sad deal if you can't do that. But yeah, overall, pretty interesting. It's also interesting if you do buy the digital edition of the PS5 right here. You can see that it does look like it's much more a better design. I can't say that the regular PlayStation with the disc drive looks better, because it definitely doesn't look better. I like how it's much more even on both sides of the digital edition and things like that. It's kind of a shame too, we still don't know how much SSDs or how much storage space is going to be on this. I'm assuming with the digital edition, they better at least put 2 terabytes bare minimum. Even 2 terabytes is not going to be enough, but it is what it is. It's interesting too, on the front of these, it looks like you're going to have a standard USB and then a USB Type-C on it, as far as I can see. So overall, very interesting, and overall, very interesting. I honestly, when it comes to the next generation of gaming consoles, really wasn't expecting both Sony and Microsoft to have consoles that stand up. I thought they would be the same as previous consoles that come out, but no, these ones stand up. But I guess they have had no choice to make these stand up. I'm guessing because of how much power are going to be both in the PS5 and the Xbox Series X. And yeah, that's pretty much it for the unveiling. Like I said, they didn't really talk too much about the actual UI of the system, what you can do on the system besides games, things like that. They did actually announce a lot of accessories for these consoles, and I don't think anyone expected all these accessories, but you can see you do have some headphones, a media remote, a charging kind of dock, and maybe a thing where you can actually like a camera module, basically. So very interesting. I do like how these systems look pretty clean, but they're still an interesting design. Now let's actually get to something that's actually more important, of course. The big thing you want to know about is which games am I excited to actually get, and things like that. Keep in mind also, it's kind of weird how they announced a lot of these games, but we actually still, as of right now, don't truly know how many of these games are going to be launch games and how many games are going to be right around launch or a little bit after launch. So that's something that's actually very interesting when it actually comes to the PS5. But let's talk about some of these games. I already have some of these games pulled up. Let's first talk about this game very quickly, Astrobot. Now, I actually played Astrobot before. It's not my first time playing Astrobot. I actually got a PlayStation VR. You can check my YouTube channel, but I did actually stream this on my YouTube channel, and I really did like Astrobot, and I actually thought Astrobot was a flat-out fantastic game. The one thing that's very interesting about this Astrobot, if you scroll all the way down to the end of the presentation for Astro Playroom, you can see it is preloaded on your PS4 by default, which is actually pretty interesting that they're actually giving you a full-fledged game right on your launch PS4, which is interesting. And since it's going to be on your launch PS5, most likely Astros Playroom is not going to be in VR because the original Astrobot was a VR-only game, so it looks like this one's going to be a standard 2D platformer that you just play on your TV, which is very interesting. And I did actually like Astrobot a lot just due to the fact that it really took a lot of the concepts of VR and a lot of the concepts of the DualShock into consideration with this game, and overall it was a flat-out fantastic game. And the fact that this game was a budget game, I do believe, when this came out on the PS4 VR, it was only, I think, $20, I do believe. So overall, a very good value and one of the best VR games, money you can spend if you want PlayStation VR. I can't recommend this game enough. So very cool. It just looks more like Astrobot 2, basically. It doesn't look like anything too crazy here. It doesn't look like it's amazing. It just looks like another Astrobot, pretty much. So yeah, I don't know what to say if I'm excited for this game or why. I just wanted to mention it because it is a game, like I said, that's going to be preloaded on everybody's PlayStation 5. And of course, you should play this game when this game is actually preloaded on your PS5. Now, the next game up is this game called Kina Bridge, I do believe. And Kina Bridge looks like it's going to be an interesting game. It actually looks like a game that I would personally play just because I'm a fan of things like 3D platformers, 2D platformers. Overall, I really like the vibe from this. And keep in mind, when you're watching all these games on the internet, you're not going to be watching them in the same graphics you would be watching them on the actual PlayStation 5 through like a 4K TV with like HDR enabled and really good frame rates and things like that. So of course these games are all obviously going to look slightly better on your PS5 when you actually get this thing hooked up, because you won't have to worry about compression, going through the internet, watching all these videos, watching my video and things like that. But this game looks like a game that I would actually be very interested to play, and something that I would actually buy because I like platformers in general. I like cutesy things. I like the art style of this game. Overall, this looks like a game that should come out at launch because I would actually buy this game, and I'd probably have a lot of fun playing this game. It looks like an action RPG slash maybe open world-esque game with a lot of different elements here. I just like the vibe of this game. This is a game that I'm personally looking forward to. Kina Bridge of Spirits, definitely an fun-looking game right there. The next game up that I actually have on this list is actually going to be the brand new Horizon game, because it did release a brand new Horizon Zero Dawn. Now, the name is not Horizon Zero Dawn 2, which you would think they would just name it Horizon Zero Dawn 2, but no, it's not called Horizon Zero Dawn 2. It's going to be called Horizon Forbidden West, and here's the gameplay for Horizon Forbidden West. Right here. I'm not quite sure if I wanted to show a lot of these games on my video, just due to the fact that a lot of these companies, to be honest, likes actually copyright striking you for showing their footage, which is kind of a shame because this is pretty much good promotion for a lot of these companies. And if you're watching my video, you may be getting excited for some of these games. Now, also keep in mind, these are games that are also coming out around the launch of the PS4, or right around a little bit after the PS5 launches. So that most likely means that these games are going to look pretty good, but once the system ages, more developers will have more time with the hardware, get more better at developing for the hardware, so games will only look better. But this is a game that's pretty much going to show you how good next generation is going to be, just because this is a really amazing game. If you want games that really show the power of the system, this is the game to play. I did actually play the original Horizon Zero Dawn, and that game looks phenomenal, and that game can even be played at higher frame rates than 1080p. I think you can play it close to 4K or 1440p on the PS4 Pro, and that game looks phenomenal. So if they did a good job with the first Horizon, you guys know that this game's going to be an amazing game. The only downside to Horizon was the fact that the original Horizon was a game that was plagued by the fact that it released right around the time that the Switch came out and Breath of the Wild came out, and that wasn't all too great since, of course, Nintendo's a really big thing. This is a new IP for Sony and things like that, so they should have released it after the Switch's unveil and Breath of the Wild and things like that. But it is what it is, and this is definitely a game that's going to be worth your $60 without a doubt. Horizon definitely delivers if you like a open world action, like RPG-esque type game. This game really does look amazing. Now, the next one up here is going to be a game called Deathloop. It does kind of look like a standard first-person shooter, but this game doesn't look all too generic. I kind of like the vibe this game's going with, and I'm actually kind of surprised that Sony didn't show more first-person shooters or didn't show more sports games here, because honestly, I really feel like this launch for the PS5 is very unique in itself, just due to the fact that they didn't actually show a lot of games that you would think would typically be at like a launch of a system. They're really trying to appeal a lot of different people, and the art styles of a lot of these different games are so varied. I'm pretty sure there's a game for everyone here, which is actually pretty interesting. This game looks like a game that I would personally be interested into. I like the art style. I like first-person shooters. I like just these type of games, and this game does seem like it is for me. Now, keep in mind, a lot of these games don't really have too much to go off of, so their trailers don't show too much gameplay. A lot of these show a lot of cinematic trailers and things like that, but at least from what we're seeing, these are the games that I'm most excited for, and this game looks like it's going to be a blast to play. It looks like it got some, like, I want to say some, I forgot what that game was. Dishonored, I think. I think it has some elements of Dishonored. It looks like it got some stealth stuff in this game. It got some rewind time or freeze time elements in this game. The gun gameplay looks like it's going to be satisfying. I like the art style overall. A pretty good game for Deathloop. So let's go ahead and look at the next game. The next game on my list was a game I was actually pretty surprised that Sony even announced. Sackboy. If you're into the PlayStation brand, and you'll know Sony did have a franchise called Little Big Planet, and Little Big Planet was this pretty amazing 2D platformer. It was pretty much their mascot, all of the PS3 life cycle and some of the PS4 life cycle, and now they're pretty much reviving this, but they're not calling it Little Big Planet. They're actually calling it Sackboy's Adventure, I do believe, and Sackboy's Adventure, or Sackboy A Big Adventure, looks like an okay game if you're into 2D platformers like Mario, Donkey Kong, things like that, and this game is definitely going to be a blast. The one thing that really did make Little Big Planet stand out from all of the other 2D platformers on the market was the fact that it did have your own create a level thing, so kind of think of Mario Maker, but in Little Big Planet. That's pretty much what that game had to offer. And I'm not sure if this game's going to have any type of content creation where you can create your own levels like Mario Maker. But from the gameplay that we're seeing here, this game looks like it's going to be a fairly good game. It looks like you'll be able to play this game with 4K... you'll be able to play this game with 4-player co-op. So that's something that's going to be very interesting for this game alone, that you'll be able to play this with four other people co-op, which is pretty nice. Some of these games honestly don't look like if you want to show off the power of the next generation of consoles. Some of these games don't really, I feel like, in my opinion, will be the best looking games for this. Some of them are going to be better than others, but for the experience, this game looks pretty good. And this is something, again, that I would personally play because I like platformers, whether they're 2D or 3D. I like cartoony games. I just like these really cool games like this, and this game would definitely speak to me on so many levels. And overall, I really do like this thing, so props to Sony for actually showing Sackboy A Big Adventure. It's actually interesting they just took the main character from Little Big Planet and actually made their own game called Sackboy A Big Adventure. But I'm pretty sure the company who makes Little Big Planet made a brand new game called Dreams, and they've been working on Dreams for quite some time, so maybe they had no time to actually make it. So I think another studio took over Little Big Planet and pretty much took out Sackboy and made its own adventure out of this game. And I guess Sackboy now is pretty much the mascot for Sony. It's interesting they decided to go with Sackboy, but they didn't decide to go with something like Crash Bandicoot as a game for the launch of the PS5, just because he's also another big mascot. But it is what it is. Another one that actually looks like it's going to be phenomenal, and it's actually maybe a day one purchase out of every other game for the PS5, is definitely going to be a game called Ratchet and Clank. The brand new Ratchet and Clank game looks amazing, and you may not know this about me. I actually played all of the Ratchet and Clank games. I'm a very big fan of this game. I remember getting this just randomly for my birthday way back on the PS2, and I love this game. I love the concept of it. It's pretty much a 3D platformer mixed with like a run and gun type shooter, because Ratchet and Clank has these gun type guns in the game. They also have these different attacks, and overall this is a very good game, and this game actually looks amazing for PS5. I know it's cartoony, but keep in mind that there's some pretty amazing ray tracing going on, especially with this game in particular. And if you're into games that really show off the power, I really feel like this game's going to show off the power of the system. And on top of that, this game also has a very cool mechanic. You can see in the gameplay they're going to have a thing where you can go through like different dimensions, like you can go through like a time warp while you're actually shooting your enemies, and I think that's going to be very cool. And I don't know if this would actually be possible on things like the PS4, just due to the fact that the PS5 should ultimately have less loading times than any other console possible, and apparently this game is actually going to use the power of the PS5 pretty good, in my opinion. And it's going to be called Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart. And the thing about this game that looks pretty interesting is that new mechanic, also the ray tracing in this. They actually showed more gameplay of this, but I actually couldn't find the other gameplay, but they showed more gameplay, and the reflections on the floor with ray tracing absolutely looked phenomenal. And Ratchet and Clank looks like they also updated the like the title of Ratchet and Clank, so that's actually pretty, and it's actually still pretty interesting that after the PS3 we got one on PS4, and now we're getting a brand new one. So you can see the developers behind this still want to support this. I forgot the name of the company. I had known the name of this company, but it is what it is. The next one on my list is actually Grand Theft Auto. They're actually going to be bringing Grand Theft Auto 5 to the PS5. Nothing too exciting about this, really. I don't really need to show gameplay for this, but I do want to talk about it because I think it's interesting that you will be able to play Grand Theft Auto 5 on the next generation of consoles. And it's actually funny that everybody makes fun of Skyrim or Elder Scrolls 5 for being ported to practically everything, but there's so many other games that are now being pretty much ported to everything. But I mean, it's easy money, and Grand Theft Auto 5 will look amazing in close to 4K resolutions, because I don't think on the current gen hardware, even the PS4 Pro and the Xbox Series X, do you get better resolution. If you do, correct me if I'm wrong, but anyway, it'll look better regardless than this current gen, even with the more powerful half-life cycled system. So that's actually pretty cool. It's a shame, of course, a release game wasn't Grand Theft Auto 6, but this game still holds up perfectly fine. You know, everybody's still going to rebuy this game if you like Grand Theft Auto, if you like open world games, if you like games that are very good with multiplayer and you just want to like mess around and things like that. Grand Theft Auto is going to be the way to go. And now this other game called Ghostwire. Ghostwire actually looks like another game that actually looks like it's going to be a pretty phenomenal game. It kind of reminds me of a horror game. It's pretty much I want to say maybe an open world game. Maybe it's linear, but it looks like this game looks like it's going to be set in Tokyo with a lot of just different elements. And overall, this game looks flat out amazing for the PS5, and I really do think this is one game that's also going to show the power of the PS5. You can already see from what I'm seeing on screen in on my monitor, it absolutely looks phenomenal. So think of this game, but with with 4K HDR on the actual console, it's going to look like a phenomenal game. And I think this is a game they've already showed, I think, at a past E3. So it's not the first time we've seen gameplay of this game, but I did want to talk about this. And then there is 2 other games that I do want to talk about. One game I do want to talk about really quickly, if I can actually find it, is, let me see here if I can go back to the PlayStation videos and see if there's another game that I actually wanted to talk about here, which I think there was at least one more. I do know I wanted to talk about Gran Turismo. Gran Turismo, nothing too special about that game. It's, of course, another simulator racing game, kind of like Forza, if you're into Forza or any other realistic racing game, because they're like a dime a dozen and there's a lot of them on the market. But the thing about Gran Turismo and about most of these racing games, they really do show the power of these systems. And I think this is a game that I'm definitely going to be buying when this game comes out, because I'm not too big a fan of real life sim games. I have played these real life simulator racing games, but the thing is, they really look gorgeous. And if this game has a VR mode, which most likely VR is coming to PS5, then I'm definitely going to buy this game to just look at cars, look at the environments, look at all the particles and the effects of the actual racetracks, because there's something special about these games. Even though they are a dime a dozen and there's nothing special about another racing game, these games will look phenomenal on next-gen hardware. Actually, you know what? That might have actually been the last game. They did actually release Resident Evil 8. And Resident Evil 8, I guess we can go ahead and look at that. Resident Evil 8 does look like a game that looks like it would actually be very good. When it comes to Resident Evil, I'm very hit or miss with the Resident Evil crowd. Sometimes I like Resident Evil, sometimes I don't like Resident Evil. It just depends how I feel. But this one looks like it's going to be amazing. Overall, I do actually like horror-based video games. There's just something about games that really do show off the atmosphere of the game, the world, and there's really no other genre that does this best than horror games. They really give you this certain feel. They make you scared. You just never know what's around. I just love how each developer tries to make horror games try to make you feel scared. I love seeing how the developer makes you scared, and most of the Resident Evils from Capcom have been amazing games. I actually ended up playing Resident Evil 7 in VR on my PS VR, and oh my god, that thing was scary as all heck, and that game was flat out amazing. That was actually one of the best looking PlayStation VR games to date, and that game I'm pretty sure actually benefited from being on the PlayStation 4 Pro. So if you had the PS4 Pro, that game was worth buying a PS4 Pro for the VR. And oh my god, and this game looks like it's going to be very, very scary. It looks like it's going to be another first-person Resident Evil game. I kind of like the fact too, they troll you a little bit with this thing that says Village right here at the end of the trailer, but then once they continue a little bit more, you finally realize that it is Resident Evil 8 right there. It's like, is this Village? But nope, Resident Evil 8. They just went V and then all that, you know, for the Roman numerals. But yeah, overall this looks like a very fantastic game. And yeah, I think this is pretty much going to wrap up this video. It's going on about 30 minutes now that I've been rambling on, and that's all the games that I've been pretty excited for with this. And I'm actually pretty excited that they have pretty much a lot of different games for a lot of different people. They're really trying to make all these games for just different people, and it's very interesting to see this. I actually really do like the fact too, with the PlayStation 5 launch, it really does seem like that they are trying a lot of new IPs, not trying to get all these old IPs. There are some old IPs here that are returning, which is nice, and then they also have some brand new IPs. I love the direction of a lot of these games when it comes to the actual art style, the graphics, the concepts. They're not your just generic stuff, and I really do think PlayStation understands gamers. Anyway, guys, this is Wayne from My Tech News, signing out.